Look, I need to tell you about the day I turned my driveway into a punchline that the entire Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association will be talking about until the heat death of the universe. And honestly, I regret nothing. Well, maybe I regret the part where I spent 3 weeks researching municipal parking lot regulations at 2 a.m. like some kind of suburban Batman, but we'll get to that. It all started on a Tuesday morning. Because of course it did. Tuesdays are when the universe decides to mess with you just enough to ruin your week, but not enough to make it interesting. I was minding my own business, drinking my coffee that tasted like disappointment and broken dreams. I refused to acknowledge that I bought the cheap stuff to save money when I noticed Deborah standing at the end of my driveway. Now, let me tell you about Deborah. Deborah is the kind of person who pronounces it Deb-or-ah, with this weird emphasis on the middle syllable, like she's auditioning for a role in a Jane Austen adaptation that nobody asked for. She's our HOA president, which is basically like being the hall monitor of suburban middle-aged adults, except with more power and significantly less self-awareness. The woman wears a visor every single day. Not for exercise, mind you, just for existing. And she color coordinates her visors with her athletic wear, which she wears despite the fact that I have never, not once, seen her do anything more athletic than aggressively pointing at things. So there's Deborah, standing at the end of my driveway at 7:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, holding her clipboard. Oh, the clipboard. We need to talk about the clipboard. This thing is her entire personality condensed into laminated wood and poor life choices. She's got her phone out, taking pictures of my driveway like she's documenting a crime scene, and I'm standing there in my bathrobe, the one with the coffee stains that I keep meaning to wash but never do because I'm basically a functional disaster, wondering what fresh suburban nightmare is about to unfold. I open the door. Big mistake. Huge. "James," she calls out. And dude, the way she says my name, it's like she's disappointed in me, but also wants me to know she's going to pray for me later. I was just doing my bi-weekly neighborhood quality inspection. Bi-weekly. She inspects the neighborhood bi-weekly. This woman has nothing better to do than walk around every 2 weeks looking for reasons to be upset about other people's property. I'm pretty sure that's not even a real thing. I think she just made it up one day when she got bored of rearranging her spice cabinet alphabetically. Which, yes, she told everyone about at the last HOA meeting. And yes, we all wanted to disappear into the floor. And I couldn't help but notice that your driveway is looking rather worn. Worn. My driveway looked worn. I mean, yeah, okay, it wasn't exactly pristine. It was a driveway. It had been driven on. That's literally its entire job description. There were some cracks. Maybe a few oil stains from that time my car decided to have a mechanical breakdown right there, because apparently even my vehicle wanted to humiliate me on my own property, and sure, one corner was kind of crumbly, but it was a driveway. It wasn't the Sistine Chapel. It wasn't a precious artifact that needed to be preserved for future generations. "Right," I said, because my brain hadn't fully loaded yet and I was running on approximately 40% capacity. "It's a driveway." Her face. Oh man, her face did this thing where her smile got tighter and her eyes got wider, and I swear I could hear the sound of her grinding her teeth into powder. "Yes, James, it is a driveway that, according to Section 7, Subsection 4, Paragraph 2 of our HOA bylaws, must be maintained in good condition to preserve property values and neighborhood aesthetics." She actually said aesthetics, like she was talking about a museum exhibit and not a chunk of concrete, where I park my 2014 Honda Civic that's held together by duct tape and sheer force of will. "I'll be sending you a formal notice," she continued, and I'm pretty sure she was getting actual joy from this, like she feeds on the misery of others, and this was her breakfast. "You'll have 30 days to address the issue. Have a blessed day." And then she just walked away, leaving me standing there in my coffee-stained bathrobe, holding my disappointing coffee, staring at my apparently offensive driveway, wondering how my life had come to this point. Here's the thing about me. I don't like confrontation. I'm the guy who will say "you too" when the movie theater employee tells me to enjoy my film. And then I'll think about it for 3 days straight, cringing at myself. I'm the guy who once apologized to a door after walking into it. I actively avoid conflict like it's my job. But there's something about being told that my driveway, on my property, that I paid for with my money that I earned by sitting in a soul-crushing office for 40 hours a week, isn't good enough for Deborah's precious neighborhood aesthetic standards that just broke something in me. I went inside, I sat down, I opened my laptop, and I started researching. Now, a normal person would have just called a contractor, gotten the driveway repaired, maybe resurfaced, called it a day, and moved on with their life. But here's the thing. I'm not normal. I'm petty. I'm so petty that I once kept a list of everyone who didn't laugh at my jokes at a party for 6 months. I'm the kind of petty that makes other petty people look well-adjusted. And Deborah, with her clipboard and her visor, and her bi-weekly inspections, had just activated my final form. I spent the next 3 days, reading HOA bylaws. Do you know how boring HOA bylaws are? They make tax law look like a thriller novel. They make instruction manuals for furniture assembly look like riveting page-turners. I read every single page of our HOA regulations, cross-referenced them with local municipal codes, and discovered something beautiful, something magnificent, something that made me laugh so hard I snorted coffee out my nose and had to explain to my neighbor why I was making weird sounds at 11 p.m. on a Thursday. According to Section 7, Subsection 4, Paragraph 2, driveways must be maintained in good condition. That's it. That's the entire requirement. There was nothing about what kind of driveway you could have. No specifications on materials, no restrictions on design, no limitations on creativity, just good condition. And according to municipal code, a private driveway could be marked with parking lines as long as it was for organizational purposes and didn't violate any traffic regulations. Oh, you beautiful, glorious loophole. I could have kissed those municipal codes, except they were on my laptop screen and I'm not that weird. Okay, I'm pretty. Weird. But not that weird. The next morning, I called 5 contractors. The first one hung up on me when I explained what I wanted to do. The second one thought I was pranking him and kept asking where the hidden cameras were. The third one just laughed for a solid minute and then said, "Sorry, man, I don't do crazy." The fourth one said he'd call me back and never did, which honestly, fair. But the fifth one was Eddie. Eddie showed up at my house 2 hours after I called him, driving a truck that was approximately 60% rust and 40% optimism, with Eddie's Asphalt and Dreams painted on the side, in letters that were peeling so badly it looked like his dreams were literally falling apart. He was wearing cargo shorts in October, had a mustache that looked like it had its own zip code, and when I explained what I wanted to do, he didn't laugh. He didn't look confused. He just got this gleam in his eye, this beautiful, manic gleam that told me this man understood exactly what I was trying to accomplish. "How long have you been planning this revenge?" he asked. 3 days of intense research, I admitted, but a lifetime of general pettiness. He nodded sagely, like I'd just shared ancient wisdom. "I've been doing asphalt work for 23 years. College driveways, mall parking lots, airport runways, you name it. I've paved it. But never, not once, has someone asked me to turn their residential driveway into a statement of suburban warfare. When do we start?" I loved Eddie immediately. We started planning that same afternoon. sitting at my kitchen table, spreading out blueprints and diagrams like we were planning a heist instead of a home improvement project. Eddie measured my driveway, 42 feet long, 18 feet wide, and started sketching out possibilities. "We could do 4 spaces," he said, tapping his pencil against the paper. "Standard parking lot size, 9 by 18 feet each." "What about 6?" I asked, because if I was going to do this, I was going to do this. Eddie looked up at me, and I swear there were tears of joy in his eyes. "6 spaces, compact car size. You magnificent lunatic. The HOA is going to lose their minds." That's the plan. We spent the next week in the planning phase, and when I say I went full obsessive mode, I mean I created a project management timeline that would make corporate executives weep with envy. I made spreadsheets tracking costs, timelines, and material specifications. I created a Gantt chart. I don't even know what a Gantt chart is, really, but I made one anyway because I Googled how to manage a complex project, and apparently that's what you do. I researched asphalt types. There are types of asphalt, who knew? And decided on a premium-grade hot mix that would last decades. I researched parking line paints and discovered there's a whole industry around reflective, high-durability traffic marking paint. I ordered paint that was rated for highways. Highways. My driveway was going to have lines that could withstand semi-trucks, even though the heaviest thing that would ever park there was my Honda Civic. My wife, Sarah, thought I'd lost my mind. We'd been married for 8 years, and she was used to my occasional weird projects. The time I built a treehouse, even though we don't have kids. The time I started collecting vintage lunchboxes for no discernible reason. But this was next level. "James," she said one night, finding me at 1 a.m. surrounded by printouts of municipal parking regulations. "You do realize you could just fix the driveway normally, right? Like a regular person?" "But where's the poetry in that?" I said. And I was so tired I might have been hallucinating, but I was also more alive than I'd felt in years. "Where's the artistry? Where's the profound statement about individual freedom in the face of tyrannical HOA overreach?" She stared at me for a long moment. "You're actually insane." Insane is such a strong word. I prefer creatively vindictive. She sighed, but she was smiling. "How much is this going to cost?" Here's where it gets embarrassing. The original quote from Eddie for a standard driveway resurface was $3,500. Reasonable, affordable, sensible. But I didn't want sensible. I wanted spectacular. By the time I added the premium asphalt, the professional line painting, the reflective paint, the parking signs, yes, plural, and Eddie's crazy person surcharge, his words, not mine, we were looking at $8,200. $8,200 to prove a point to my HOA president. I've made worse financial decisions. I once bought a timeshare presentation just to get the free weekend in Florida, and that was a disaster, but this was definitely up there. "Do it," Sarah said. And that's when I knew I'd married the right person. If we're going to be the weird house in the neighborhood, let's be legendary. The project started on a Monday morning. Eddie showed up with his crew, 3 guys who all looked like they'd seen some things and were ready to see some more things, and they got to work. First, they had to demolish the old driveway, which involved a jackhammer and a level of violence that I found deeply satisfying. Every crack that broke apart felt like justice. Every chunk of concrete they loaded into the truck was a piece of Deborah's power crumbling away. The neighbors started noticing immediately. Mrs. Chen from next door came over with cookies and questions. "You're redoing the driveway? That's nice, dear. Very thorough." "Oh, this is just phase 1, I said, taking a cookie. "Wait until you see phase 2. Her smile got uncertain. Phase 2? I just smiled mysteriously and went back to watching the demolition. Tom from 3 houses down showed up on day 2, beer in hand, even though it was 10 a.m., because Tom lives by his own rules. "Dude, what's happening here? This looks intense." HOA said my driveway looked worn, I explained. "I'm unwearing it." "By destroying it completely?" "Sometimes you have to burn it all down to build it back better. That's just basic philosophy." Tom nodded like this made perfect sense, which is why Tom is my favorite neighbor. The demolition took 3 days. 3 days of noise, dust, and my neighbors trying to figure out what kind of midlife crisis I was having. Then came the grading and the base layer, which Eddie explained was crucial for proper drainage and longevity. I nodded along like I understood any of what he was saying, but really I was just excited about the parking lines that were coming. On day 6, they laid the new asphalt. And oh man, it was beautiful. Smooth, black, perfect. It looked like a piece of the night sky had been transplanted to my property. It looked like you could eat off it, though I wouldn't recommend that because it's asphalt, and that's weird even for me. We had to let it cure for 5 days before we could paint the lines. 5 days of having the most beautiful, pristine driveway in the neighborhood, and Deborah drove by at least twice a day, slowing down, staring, probably trying to figure out what fresh nightmare I was preparing for her. I waved every time. She never waved back. During the curing period, I worked on the signage. I'd ordered a professional parking lot sign, the kind you see at shopping centers, that said, "Private parking. Violators will be towed." I had it mounted on a post at the entrance to my driveway. It was completely unenforceable because you can't actually tow people from your own driveway, but it looked official, and that's what mattered. I also ordered smaller signs for each parking space, number 1 through 6, in that same official parking lot font. I was going full commitment here, people. On day 11, the line painter arrived. His name was Frank, and he'd been painting parking lot lines for 30 years. He pulled up in a truck that had more specialized equipment than a surgical suite, and he surveyed my driveway with the intensity of an artist examining a blank canvas. 6 compact spaces?" he asked Eddie. 6 compact spaces, Eddie confirmed. Frank nodded slowly. "I've painted lines at malls, airports, hospitals, schools. Never painted lines on someone's residential driveway for the express purpose of annoying their HOA. I'm honored to be part of this." I wanted to hug Frank. I settled for a firm handshake and promising him I'd recommend him to anyone who needed parking lines painted, though realistically, how often does that come up in casual conversation? Frank spent the next day measuring, marking, and preparing. He used chalk lines and measuring tape and a level, treating my driveway like it was a professional job site, which technically it was, except the professional job was petty revenge disguised as home improvement. On day 12, he painted. The lines went down in bright, reflective yellow, the same paint used on highways, rated to last, for years even under heavy traffic. Each line was exactly 4 inches wide, perfectly straight, perfectly spaced. The parking spaces were each 7 feet wide by 16 feet long. The standard size for compact car spaces according to International Parking Institute guidelines. Yes, that's a real thing. Yes, I researched it. Yes, I have a problem. When Frank finished and pulled back to let me see the full effect, I actually got emotional. There, in front of my house, was the most aggressively over-the-top, beautifully executed, completely unnecessary parking lot I'd ever seen. 6 perfectly marked spaces, bright yellow lines, professional signage. It was glorious. It was absurd. It was everything I'd dreamed of and more. Eddie clapped me on the shoulder. "You did it, man. You actually did it." "We did it," I corrected him. "This is a team victory." We stood there for a moment, admiring our handiwork, and then Eddie said, "So what happens now?" "Now," I said, "we wait for Deborah to discover what I've done, and then we watch the beautiful chaos unfold." I didn't have to wait long. Deborah drove by that evening. Just as I was standing in parking space number 3, I'd decided to rotate through all 6 spaces, 1 per day, just to use them all equally because I'm insane like that. She drove past, then I heard the screech of brakes. Then I heard her car backing up. Then I heard her get out of her car, and when I turned around, her face was doing this thing where it was cycling through emotions so fast I thought she might actually short-circuit. "James," she said, and her voice was strangled, like she was trying to speak while simultaneously choking on her own rage. "What is this?" "Oh, hey, Deborah," I said cheerfully, walking over from parking space 3. "Got the driveway fixed, just like you asked. Looks great, right? Really improves the neighborhood aesthetic." She pointed at the parking lines with a shaking finger. Those are... You've turned your driveway into a parking lot." "Well, technically it's still a driveway," I said, pulling out my phone where I'd saved all my research. "See, according to Municipal Code Section 15-42, private driveways can include organizational markings as long as they don't interfere with public traffic flow. And according to our HOA bylaws, Section 7, Subsection 4, Paragraph 2, driveways just need to be maintained in good condition. Which mine now is. Excellent condition, actually. I used premium-grade asphalt and highway-rated paint. This driveway is going to outlast both of us." Her mouth opened and closed like she was trying to form words, but her brain couldn't decide which ones to use. "This is... You can't... The spirit of the bylaws clearly indicates..." "The spirit," I interrupted. And okay, maybe I was enjoying this a little too much. "The bylaws don't say anything about spirit. They say good condition. Want to argue my driveway isn't in good condition? Because I've got documentation, I've got receipts, I've got contractor statements, I've got before and after photos. I've got a whole presentation ready to go." I didn't have a presentation yet, but I would. I'd make one that night. I'd already mentally labeled it The Driveway Defense, a comprehensive analysis of regulatory compliance and suburban aesthetics. Deborah's face had progressed to a color that I'm pretty sure doesn't exist in normal human skin tones. Her visor was crooked. Her clipboard was trembling. "I'm bringing this to the HOA board. We'll be having a special meeting to discuss this travesty." "Great," I said. "When's the meeting? I'll prepare some materials, maybe print out some handouts, really help everyone understand the legal and aesthetic considerations involved in modern driveway design." She got back in her car without another word and drove away so aggressively that she almost hit Mrs. Chen's mailbox, which would have been ironic since Deborah was always citing people for improper mailbox positioning. The next 2 weeks were glorious. Word spread through the neighborhood faster than gossip at a high school reunion. People would drive by slowly, stopping to take pictures. Some people thought it was hilarious. Some people thought I was insane. Some people, and this was the best part, started asking Eddie for his contact information because they wanted to do weird, passive-aggressive home improvement projects of their own. Mrs. Chen told me she was considering putting a fountain in her front yard shaped like a giant teacup, just to see what Deborah would do. Tom said he was thinking about painting his fence to look like a bookshelf. The retired couple at the end of the street started planning a rock garden that would spell out "free" in their front yard. I'd accidentally started a suburban rebellion, and it was beautiful. The special HOA meeting was scheduled for 3 weeks after Deborah's discovery of my parking lot. 3 weeks that I spent preparing like I was defending my doctoral thesis. I created a 43-slide PowerPoint presentation. I printed handouts. I made copies of every relevant bylaw, municipal code, and legal precedent I could find. I even consulted with an actual lawyer friend. Okay, he was a real estate attorney who owed me a favor from when I helped him move, who confirmed that everything I'd done was completely legal. The meeting was held on a Thursday evening at the community center. Normal HOA meetings drew maybe 15 people, mostly retirees with nothing better to do. This meeting had 47 attendees. 47 people showed up to watch me defend my parking lot driveway. Some of them brought popcorn. Tom brought beer. It was like the Super Bowl of suburban pettiness. Deborah called the meeting to order, and I could tell she'd been preparing too. She had documents. She had photos. She had a whole speech prepared about community standards and neighborhood harmony and the slippery slope of allowing unconventional property modifications. If we allow this, she said, gesturing dramatically at a blown-up photo of my driveway that she'd apparently had professionally printed. What's next? Will someone turn their front yard into a miniature golf course? Will someone paint their house to look like a circus tent? We must maintain standards. Then it was my turn. I plugged in my laptop, pulled up my presentation, and began. Thank you, Deborah, for that spirited introduction, I said, clicking to slide 1. Tonight, I'll be presenting The Driveway Defense, a comprehensive analysis of regulatory compliance, municipal code adherence, and the aesthetic enhancement of residential properties through creative parking space design. I heard Tom snort laugh in the back row. This was going to be fun. I went through every single slide. I showed the before pictures of my driveway, the cracks, the stains, the generally sad state that had started this whole thing. I displayed Section 7, subsection 4, paragraph 2 of the HOA bylaws in giant text on the screen. I defined good condition using 4 different dictionaries plus legal definitions from property law. I showed the after pictures from multiple angles, highlighting the smooth surface, the professional workmanship, the attention to detail. Then I got into the legal stuff. I displayed every relevant municipal code, explained the definition of organizational markings on private property, showed examples of other residential driveways with markings. I'd found 3 in neighboring towns. People apparently do weird things with their driveways all the time. I cited case law. I had a whole slide about the history of parking lot design standards. Slide 28 was a comparison of my property value before and after the renovation. I'd actually had an appraiser friend look at it. Okay, he was an amateur appraiser who'd taken 1 class, but still, and he estimated the renovation had increased my property value by approximately $10,000, well above the $8,200 I'd spent. So not only have I complied with all HOA regulations, I said, I've actually increased my property value, which by extension increases neighborhood property values. You're welcome. Deborah looked like she was about to have an aneurysm. Slide 35 was my favorite. It was a photo of Deborah's own driveway, which had a small crack near the garage. Now, I'm not saying that anyone else's driveway doesn't meet community standards, I said innocently, but I do think we should apply the rules consistently. If we're really concerned about driveways being in good condition, perhaps we should survey all the driveways in the neighborhood. Just to be fair. Several people laughed. Deborah's crack was now the subject of neighborhood discussion. I'd pulled an Uno reverse card on her, and it felt amazing. The final slides addressed potential objections. Yes, it looked unusual. But unusual wasn't prohibited by the bylaws. Yes, it looked like a parking lot. but it was a private driveway with organizational markings, which was legal. Yes, it was petty. But pettiness wasn't against HOA regulations, and if it was, half the board would be in violation. I ended with Slide 43, a picture of my driveway at sunset, the yellow lines glowing in the golden light, with text that said, "Excellence in driveway maintenance, a new standard for Willowbrook estates." The applause started immediately. Not everyone clapped. Deborah and a few of her close friends sat in stony silence, but at least half the room was applauding, and Tom was outright cheering. Deborah called for a vote on whether my driveway violated community standards. The vote was 15 in favor of me, 14 against. I'd won by one vote. My parking lot driveway was officially approved by the HOA. After the meeting, I was surrounded by neighbors wanting to talk. Some asked for Eddie's contact information. Some shared their own HOA horror stories. Tom invited me to his house for celebratory beers and called me a suburban legend. One woman asked if I'd help her fight the HOA's complaint about her garden gnomes. I told her I was retired from HOA warfare, but I appreciated the offer. The best moment came when Mr. Patterson, an 80-year-old retiree who'd lived in the neighborhood for 30 years, came up to me with tears in his eyes. "Son," he said, "I've been dealing with this HOA nonsense for 3 decades. Deborah once made me remove a bird feeder because it wasn't aesthetically aligned with neighborhood standards. What you did tonight? That was beautiful. That was art." I wasn't crying. You were crying. In the months that followed, my driveway became a neighborhood landmark. People would give directions using it as a reference point. "Yeah, turn left at the house with the parking lot driveway." Tour guides in the area. Okay, there aren't really tour guides, but if there were, would probably mention it. Kids would sometimes draw it in their pictures of the neighborhood. Deborah never spoke to me directly again. She communicates exclusively through written notices left in my mailbox, typed in the most passive-aggressive font possible. Times New Roman, 12-point, single-spaced, the font choice of people who've given up on joy. Her bi-weekly inspections mysteriously stopped including my property. I like to think I broke her spirit, just a little bit, just enough. 3 months after the meeting, the city launched a neighborhood beautification initiative, and you know what they did? They featured my driveway in their newsletter as an example of creative property improvement and dedication to maintenance standards. They put a photo of it on the city website. My parking lot driveway was officially recognized by municipal authorities as a positive contribution to the community. I printed that newsletter, framed it, and hung it in my garage. It's positioned perfectly so that it's the first thing Deborah would see if she ever came into my garage, which she never will. But the principle stands. Sarah still thinks I'm insane, but she also admits that it was worth it. "Most people have a boring midlife crisis," she said. "They buy a sports car or take up golf. You went to war with your HOA and won. That's kind of impressive, in a deeply weird way." People ask me if I regret spending $8,200 and countless hours on such a petty project. And honestly, not even a little bit. That money bought me something priceless. The pure, unadulterated satisfaction of being so aggressively, perfectly, absurdly compliant with regulations that no one could complain. It bought me the joy of parking in a different numbered space every day. It bought me the legend status in my neighborhood. It bought me the knowledge that somewhere in this bureaucratic, HOA-ruled suburban nightmare, one person stood up and said, "You want good condition? I'll show you. Good condition that you can't complain about." My driveway is still perfect. The lines haven't faded even slightly. That highway-grade paint is earning its keep. I rotate through the parking spaces religiously. Space 1 on Mondays, Space 2 on Tuesdays, and so on. Do I need 6 parking spaces for 1 car? Absolutely not. But that's not the point. The point is that I can have 6 parking spaces, and there's not a single thing in the HOA bylaws that can stop me. Sometimes, late at night, I go out to my garage and just look at my driveway. Those perfect yellow lines, glowing slightly in the street light. Those 6 immaculately marked spaces. That sign that says, private parking, violators will be towed, even though I can't actually tow anyone. And I smile. Because in a world full of Deborahs with their clipboards and their visors and their arbitrary enforcement of vague regulations, I found a way to win. The moral of this story, if there is one, is this. Sometimes life hands you a ridiculous situation, and you have a choice. You can respond proportionately, reasonably, sensibly. Or you can go completely overboard, spend way too much money, learn more about parking lot regulations than any human should ever know, and turn your driveway into a work of passive-aggressive art. I chose option 2, and I'd do it again without hesitation. My driveway is in excellent condition, Deborah. The best condition. Award-winning, city newsletter-featured, legally bulletproof condition. And there's absolutely nothing in your precious bylaws that you can do about it. Welcome to parking space number 3. I'll be in space 4 tomorrow.